You're listening to the Feel Good Astrology podcast with Louisa Tannermunson. To request your personal reading, go to feelgoodastrology.com.
Hey there, welcome back. It's Louisa Tannermunson with Pluto Through the Houses. And this is a series of shortish, I say shortish very pointedly because they're getting longer each time I record one, but they're shortish podcasts about Pluto going through the different houses. So for instance, in this one, which is Pluto through the 10th house, I'm looking very much about what it's like to grow up with Pluto in the 10th in your natal chart, but also what happens should Pluto be transiting through the 10th house, i.e. moving through it. If you've listened to me before, welcome back. If you're a new listener, welcome to Feel Good Astrology. I hope you like it. So one of the things about these podcasts is I'm just sharing my thoughts based on the unique strengths that you have because of your Pluto position, and also the challenges that might come up in terms of things to do with like fears, panics, disasters, transformation, and also transcendence. So Pluto's a planet that transforms our experience. Essentially, it's the god of wealth and power and the underworld. And if you'd like to learn a little bit more about Pluto, please do have a look at my Pluto in Aquarius podcast, because I put in a lot of detail about that there. Now, Pluto shows us where we seek power. You know, it shows us where we feel weak and vulnerable and where we need to protect ourselves. So it really shows us what our ego does to safety-proof our life so that we don't fall victim to the fear that we think may well happen. And Pluto can really show us through his position in your birth chart, the kinds of traumas we might experience, some of the ways we might be manipulated. It might talk about how we have sexual prowess. It'll also talk about any energy imbalances and also the kinds of enemies that might show up in our lives. From a spiritual point of view, I think Pluto shows us what we have yet to yield to, i.e., like what is it that we're holding on to? You know, what is one of these no-go areas for us? Because we all have these no-go areas, and what are they? You know, I was thinking about this. I was having a conversation with Carl, my husband, this morning about no-go areas. And it occurs to me the no-go areas that people just won't go there. You know, like you've got like parents and you talk to them and all of a sudden they give you that look and they're like, no, I'm not going to go there. These no-go areas are places where we could actually transform and we're stopping us from transforming. You know, there's something that is impeding, stopping and blocking us from exploring how we can find freedom and success with something. And so, I think when we have a no-go area, there's this false awareness, a false maybe arrogance about who we are. There's something that we're not prepared to look at. And it usually is something really deep and painful, really painful to learn. And here's the thing, you know, my experience has proven to me over and over again, and from what I've heard from clients and stuff, is Pluto and its transits and other planets' transits to our Pluto always teaches us how we can be more free. Absolutely. How we can uncover our darkest patterns and our darkest beliefs about ourselves and find freedom and light and joy and ease. So let's now have a look at the actual 10th house itself and then start combining and kind of weaving together these two energy systems. So the energy of the 10th house and also the energy of Pluto. So in the 10th then, we're really talking about our destiny. Now, a lot of astrologers just say that the midheaven represents our career. And that's shorthand for a lot of things, I think. I like to think of it as our sense of destiny, our sense of purpose. It's a place of our reputation. How appreciated are we? You know, this point, like that starts, the midheaven that starts is the cusp to the 10th house. It really shows our direction and our outer world. It shows how we stand strong as an independent person, free from our family. You know, it shows how we stand in the world. Now, some people use astrology to look at you know, parents, and I always find, and not every astrologer agrees with me. I know a couple of astrologers that do agree with me, but you know, for me, I find that the 10th house often represents the most outwardly facing parent, the one that is more successful, the one that has more power, the one that has more influence. And, in my lifetime, what I've noticed is often that's the father, the one who has more outward success outside of the family. That's not necessarily true of these days. And that's not to cause any rifts in your belief systems about gender and ideology and stuff. So please forgive me from my own perspective. And my other experience, I think, is that the fourth house often shows us more about the more yin parent, the parent who was more inwardly facing, the parent that was more concerned with the raising of the family and the sowing the seeds of the culture. And then the 10th house parent was the one that really brought the family and the children outside of the family experience and into the world, like delivering the family into the world, protecting them whilst they're doing it. So I think the 4th and the 10th, they are houses that are in polarity to each other. And I do see them representing the mother and the father. And they, like I said, they can be role reversed. You might have a dad that's a lot more yin-like, a lot more motherly in his approach. And you might have a woman that's a lot more yang-like in the real world. And, we all have these parts within us. We all have a yin and a yang. We all have these different aspects and archetypes within us. So anyway, I see the 10th as representing our father, or the more... the more punitive, the more controlling, the more authoritarian parent, the more outward facing one. The 10th house also represents authority in general, the powers that be that we might have to live up to, the powers that be that set the agenda for us. And it also represents our career success, and our culmination, our rising up. And if we think about Pluto, as I've gone through this series, I've been talking about the energy of Pluto as it goes through each house. It picks up a new flavour, and it kind of learns some tricks. It teaches us something, and then it moves on to the next house as if it's going through its own evolutionary journey. And so what I recognise about the switch from Pluto in the 9th to Pluto in the 10th is that we've got a movement from letting go of all of our beliefs and moving beyond the veils of our beliefs and our politics and our philosophy. Once we're free of all the old belief systems and ideas that we have about the world, then we can step into our destiny. It's almost like Pluto in the 10th is about the power of our sovereignty. It's how we can succeed. It's how we can rise. It's how we can take control of our own life. Now, I'm pretty sure there'll be lots of really strong CEOs that have Pluto in the 10th house, or government officials, or people who rise up, have a definite Pluto in the 10th. They are ruling their what was I going to say? Like embassy. They're ruling their environment. They're ruling their company. They're ruling their country. They're ruling their governments. They're ruling their people with an iron fist. It's a very, very strong archetype. It is the place of having pure power, I guess. I mean, if we think about the 10th house in astrology, it's associated with the sign of Capricorn, which is also associated with Saturn. And, when Pluto and Saturn came into a conjunction in the sign of Capricorn, also with Jupiter at the start of the COVID phenomenon, power really kind of coagulated and stuck together. There was this definite feeling that power was determining the lives of everyone. It was almost removing the sovereignty of people and saying, this is what it is, and this is the new normal. This is how you have to address this, and this is what you do in this situation. So, I mean, that's a really good sort of demonstration. It's more a description, it's an illustration. There you go. It's an illustration of how the energy of Pluto in the 10th can manifest itself. It doesn't just want power, it wants all power. It wants to be almighty. That's a really, I think, strong, maybe negative view of the Pluto in the 10th. I mean, Pluto in the 10th could also be associated with somebody who does great kindness and has a lot of mechanics behind them to make sure that happens. So you may well find somebody who has a very strong philanthropic way of expressing their Pluto in the 10th. But in general, the 10th is about power and sovereignty and how we rise up and how we show ourselves. Between the 4th and the 10th, I also think the 4th is, our private life, and our 10th is a public life. So people with a very strong Pluto in the 10th may well find that they court the public awareness quite a bit. They may well be people who are famous, who want to be famous, who become well known, who become the best in their area. They may also be people that get embroiled in some kind of public drama. In fact, you often see, like when the moon is in a strong place, in particular in the 10th as well, or on the midheaven, you see people like their emotional lives are splashed all over the papers. So you've got this kind of energy with Pluto in the 10th as well. It's very public. It's like your transformation is happening in front of everyone's eyes. So anyway, let's have a look at where you might seek power and how Pluto might influence you if you're born with it in the 10th. So really, I see this as you wanting to be in charge of your direction, and woe betide anyone that tells you otherwise. You want to be able to move where you want to move. You want to succeed in the way that you want to succeed. You want to receive compliments for the things that you think you do well, rather than those kind of lame compliments where people tell you something that you don't actually believe about yourself. It's to be completely in your own and under your own jurisdiction. Like nobody, I guess it's like being above the law, finding a way to be above the law or separate from the law, that you are your own law. It also represents a very strong, determining will. And so, often, like I said, the 10th house is related to parents. So you may be one of the people who has grown up with a very, very strong and dominant parent, one who has absolutely got an indefeatable and indefatigable, like a non-tiring and a big tyrant of a parent, because that would give such a strong impact. That often shows up in the charts of people with very, very strong and difficult parents. And what you fear is you might fear being magnificent. You might fear having all the power because of what you see happens to people who have all that power. You might fear for your dreams to come true. And you might also fear that because what happens if you fail at your wishes coming true and that it's in the public eye? Your fears is a massive fall from grace. You may well have been born into a situation where you should actually have every advantage and you should do well, and you might have fear of what happens if I don't do well. I've had every advantage. Crikey, what happens now? So these are all big themes. What you're also learning is that being fully responsible for something, being at the top of your game, being completely in power is a huge responsibility, and it is one that you can fail at, and it's almost like a public duty. It's an unfailable position, like you're in an unfailable position, and fear that you may well fail it. So what you need to learn is that maybe success isn't all that it's cracked up to be, that it may well also be quite lonely at the top, because when you're at the top and other people want that top spot too, it can feel very, very competitive. There's a lot of difficult things to learn about that. And you may well be learning, how can I be at the top of my game without any of the negative attachments to it? How can I be the best that I can be and also shield myself from some of the pain? Because the moment you raise yourself up, you're seen, and you might be envied, you might be disliked. There's all sorts of different things going on there. Just in the same way that if you rise up against, or in your family where there's a strong, determining parent, you can be pulled back down again. And who is causing you all this pain? Well, ultimately it's always us, isn't it, that's causing our own pain. But in general, you may find that you get a lot of people who can't dream with you. So you might have all these great big dreams, and you're about to enact your dreams and make them make them manifest. And there might be people who are sneakily trying to put you down, because they feel threatened by your power, and they're trying to put you down. They're trying to warn you off it so you don't go for it and you don't succeed. There'll be people who don't believe that you are sovereign or that you don't deserve to be in charge of yourself. There will be authority or father figures or parent figures who tell you, you're not ready enough for this, you're not good enough for this. Very much like a teacher at school. You may well have had those kinds of experiences already where people are trying to encourage you out of being too big for your boots. So it's almost like you've grown up. What I'm seeing here, and this is a bit of a Leo thing, but I'm seeing like a pride of lions, and you may well be the next leader of a pack, and at the same time you're kind of cast out because there's no room for you at the moment, and it's difficult to establish yourself. So that's one of the darker sides of having Pluto in the 10th. Is there space for you to be as magnificent as you are in the environment that you're in? Now, if your Pluto's well connected to other planets in your chart, you might find, if there's lots of trines and sextiles, that it's actually giving you the strength and determination to really follow your dreams and to be powerful in your life, and to not have any issues with being powerful, to not worry about it, to not worry about the impact of it, and to know that you can do it, that you've got the responsibility to do it and carry that energy. But if you've got a lot of squares and oppositions, you may well feel a little bit dejected in the level of success that you have. You may have attempted to get into the public eye, or to launch your career, or to find your own natural authority. And there may be some harsh lessons playing out again and again. It's almost like the more you push for prominence, the more you're put into the public eye, and it might not be favourable. I would say that with the squares and oppositions, you're better off really just enjoying what you do and developing an indifference about being prominent, because if you're really in your flow and really doing what you're doing and really doing it beautifully, other people will lift you up, other people will find out about you. And so I often think with things like squares and oppositions, you can definitely spend your whole life working really hard, much harder than everyone else, to achieve that level of prominence that comes to some people so easily. But what I would absolutely recommend you do is just that you enjoy your journey, because it is your destiny, and what is for you will reach you and other people will help you. There will be co-creative factors coming to your rescue at some point. Now, this is quite difficult because, obviously thriving in the modern world is a big issue for most of us. We all need to earn a living, or most of us need to earn a living to be able to survive. And capitalism, as we have it, basically you're either on your way up or you're on your way down. It's very difficult. If you're managing to stay stable in a capitalistic world, the chances are you just don't see the final trajectory. And if you're stabilizing but not increasing what's coming in, you're actually on your way down. And if you're kind of keeping stable but almost not quite, you're already on a downward trajectory. It's really difficult to truly succeed when you're comparing yourself to your income and judging yourself based on your income. So I think it's a very tough one to have Pluto in the 10th, where you're really wanting to succeed and be seen as successful, because the markers for success and how we're judged on success are usually based on how much money are you earning, or what kind of car you drive, or where do you live, and do you have the trappings of success. So it's a huge one. And one that we often take very personally. Now, if you think it would be useful to unpack it in a small, focused online study group, like a mastery group, then please do get in touch and arrange. Just let me know that you're interested. It's louisatannermunson@gmail.com, because I like to get groups together so we can have further discussions and explorations and learn from each other. I always think that's a really useful thing to do. So let's assume then you've got Pluto going into your 10th, which means immediately before it goes into your 10th, it's going to hit your midheaven, which is one of the most sensitive points of your chart. So let's assume that. So what will be going on for you? And I know a few people who've gone through this, and now have their Pluto firmly in their 10th house, after it going over their MC, their midheaven. And some of them have done really, really well out of this. It's not guaranteed that it's going to lift you up. That's the sad thing. You could see it coming and think, wow, power is coming into my 10th house career. This is going to be really good. But it's also like, where am I controlling things too much? So, okay, right now, it may just occur that there's a bit of a disaster in your career or your career reputation, almost like there's a crushing outside power as it's coming up close to your midheaven. What's really happening here is you're finally starting to get seen. I always see those first little crushes of power as actually being very useful, because it's an identification. It's like a little marker in the ground to say, you've actually caught the attention of people. Because if you weren't catching the attention of people, you wouldn't be getting any pushback. So those first little bits of pushback are an indication that you may well be on the right track. It's just you've got to just tweak it here and tweak it there. So, it can take up to 4 years to really clear the energy of the midheaven. You'll feel it coming up for a couple of years, and you'll probably be really working hard and studying hard and really perfecting your art. And then at the time it's right on your midheaven is usually a time when you've got a choice point. Like, are you going to continue with this? Are you going to carry on with what you've already built? And if so, what are you going to do differently because something's not quite right? And if you can keep your head during this time, it usually gives you some really clear instructions if you can unpack it. There'll be some clear things that you can notice, some clear patterns about what you need to do differently, and maybe some wisdom as to how you can counter the resistance, how you can work with the resistance. It's also quite a good time to have a good peer, a good mentor, that's coming into your life. Now, as Pluto goes further into the 10th, there's also the feeling of amalgamation and growth and stability, because they're all Capricorn themes, and the 10th house is sort of associated with Capricorn. So there's opportunities coming in, and there's invitations to rise up with other risers. So it often shows that you're in a place of rising, and other risers are recognizing you. So this is also a good indication that you're on the right track. The secret, I think, with having Pluto going through your 10th house is to know who you are career-wise really before Pluto starts going into the 10th. Because if you really know who you are before Pluto goes over the midheaven, you're already aware of your unique selling point, or what it is that floats your boat, or what it is that you really love doing about yourself. If you've just been doing a corporate job all your life because that's what you fell into after college or university, you're not necessarily in a place that's ready. Unless you're wanting to progress within the corporation, then you're probably right on cue. But I really see the 10th house as being a calling and an opportunity to really come into our purpose, our true destiny. So there's a lot more. I've yet to meet many people who really dream of having a job that doesn't really personally affect them or personally affect people that they love. I really feel like a calling has some kind of element of personal connection and care for others. So yeah, I think if you already know your personal selling point, your USP before this happens, this will really help you rise up. What is your big learning here then? What is this all about eventually, like when you're like 70 or 90 and looking back at these crazy times when Pluto went into the 10th, like what will you be laughing at yourself about and saying, oh my God, you learned that, giggling, cackling to yourself. You'll be, the basic learning is that you can survive. This is a place where we're learning to outgrow our parents. We're learning to outgrow authority. We're learning to stand on our own 2 feet. And so your big learning here as Pluto goes through the 10th is that you can survive this. In fact, you were built for this. You are a grown-up. You are capable. You've eclipsed your dominant parent. You have the keys to great power in what you do. And I really like the phrase from Uncle Ben in Spider-Man. So he's talking to young Spider-Man, young Peter Parker, and he says, with great power comes great responsibility. So this is your journey at the moment. It's how can you use all the power that you realize you have and how can you use it responsibly? Because, if you don't use it responsibly, you've reached a pinnacle where people will notice and you'll be shamed, and, your reputation is at stake. So this is a great calling. It's a time to be great. It's a time to be magnificent. If you're fearing being magnificent, then, it is time to really boost yourself up, boost up your confidence, and realize what you're really doing is going to help yourself and lots of other people. But yeah, you've reached a time when your dreams really could come true. You could really transform that into action. So there you go. I'm going to leave that with you. I hope that was helpful. If I can be of any further help, then feel free to reach out at louisatannermunson@gmail.com or go to www.feelgoodastrology.com. But anyway, thanks for joining me today, and look forward to connecting with you real soon. Bye for now.
You've been listening to the Feel Good Astrology podcast with Louisa Tanner Munson. To request your personal reading, go to feelgoodastrology.com.